In a hushed whisper, the wind carries tales of an old, decrepit house, standing alone in its haunting solitude. A house that time seems to have forgotten, yet its story is etched in the hearts of those who dare to listen. Amidst the thick, chilling fog, a silhouette emerges, a young girl, Laura, running from a past that's as grim as the night enveloping her. Lost, cold, and desperate, Laura stumbles upon the house. Its eerie silence is only broken by the occasional creaking of the aged wooden floors and the rustling of the wind through the skeletal trees. The house, though dilapidated and unwelcoming, offers Laura a refuge from the biting cold outside. As she steps inside, the air grows heavy with an unknown dread. Laura hears strange, unexplainable noises echoing through the vast emptiness of the house. The hair on the back of her neck stands up, a shiver runs down her spine. But Laura, driven by desperation, chooses to ignore the unsettling atmosphere. As the darkness of the night deepens, the house reveals its secret. The spectral figure of a young girl, Mary, materializes from the shadows. Her translucent form flickers like a candle's flame, casting an otherworldly glow in the gloom. Laura's heart pounds in her chest, her breath catches in her throat. She's not alone in this house. It's haunted. But the spirit of Mary, unlike the cruel world Laura is running from, doesn't seem to bear any malice. She's just a lonely, lost soul, much like Laura herself. An uncanny bond forms between the living and the dead, two girls brought together by a cruel twist of fate, their stories echoing each other. As the spectral figure of Mary becomes clearer, Laura's fear gradually gives way to curiosity. Who is this ghostly girl? Why is she here? And can Laura, a runaway herself, find it in her heart to help another lost soul? As the moonlight pierced through the cracks of the weathered house, Laura came face to face with the ghostly inhabitant, Mary. A chilling encounter that marked the beginning of an unlikely friendship in the heart of a frightening abode. The apparition of a little girl floated in the room, her gaze fixed on Laura. Her voice, as soft as a whisper, echoed through the eerie silence. "My name is Mary," she said. Her spectral form shimmered faintly in the dim light, but her presence was as real as the fear that clung to the air. Laura, frozen in place, could only stare back at this ghostly child. The terror that gripped her slowly began to dissolve, replaced by a strange sense of familiarity. She too was a lost soul, just like Mary. Both of them, victims of cruel adoptive families, found themselves seeking refuge in this forsaken house. Gradually, Laura found the strength to speak. "Why are you here, Mary?" she asked. Mary's gaze softened, the story of her tragic past hidden within her ethereal eyes. She spoke of her adoption, of the family that had only wanted her for the fortune she'd inherited. She spoke of her abandonment, left alone in this house to die after they'd claimed her wealth. Her tale was a chilling symphony of betrayal and despair, a lament that echoed through the hollow halls of their shared sanctuary. As Laura listened, she felt a bond forming between them. A bond forged in the fires of shared pain and mutual understanding. She could see in Mary's eyes the same longing that mirrored her own, a longing for justice, for retribution against the ones who had wronged them. Mary's voice trailed off, her tale of woe coming to an end. The room fell silent once more, the only sound being the distant howl of the wind outside. Laura's heart ached for the lost child before her, the child who had been robbed of her life and left to wander these halls in solitude. Laura, filled with compassion and determination, looked at Mary and said, "I will help you, Mary. We will find justice." And in the silence that followed, Laura could swear she saw a faint glimmer of hope ignite in Mary's spectral eyes. Laura, armed with Mary's story, ventured into the town the following day. With a determination burning in her eyes, she stepped into the world, ready to unearth the secrets that lay beneath the surface. The town, draped in an eerie silence, seemed to hold its breath as Laura moved through its streets, her resolve unshaken. She began her quest by asking the locals about Mary's adoptive family. Whispers of a forgotten tale started to form a chilling narrative. The family was known for their cruelty and greed, a reputation that ran deep within the town's collective memory. The townsfolk spoke in hushed tones about a fortune, a vast inheritance left to Mary by her real parents. Laura's heart sank with each tidbit of information she gathered, the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle falling into place, forming a grim picture. The inheritance, it seemed, was the root of the evil that befell Mary. Her adoptive family, blinded by their greed, saw her not as a child to be loved, but as a golden goose. The townsfolk spoke of how the family's lifestyle changed overnight after they adopted Mary. Their sudden wealth was a stark contrast to their previously humble existence, a change that didn't go unnoticed by the town. As Laura delved deeper, she discovered the most horrific part of this tale. Mary, the innocent soul, was abandoned by her adoptive family in the very house Laura had found refuge. Left alone, helpless, Mary succumbed to a fate she didn't deserve. The realization hit Laura like a tidal wave, the harsh truth of Mary's past washing over her. Her heart ached for Mary, the little girl who was robbed of her life and happiness. She felt a strange connection with her, a bond formed out of their shared experiences. The truth was vile, it was cruel, but it was something Laura had to face. Laura returned to the house, her heart heavy with the truth she had uncovered. The haunting past of Mary had been laid bare, a story that was as tragic as it was horrifying. But Laura wasn't going to let it end here. She was determined to right the wrongs, to fight for Mary. The pursuit of justice had just begun. Laura, now knowing the truth, was determined to bring Mary's killers to justice. Her heart was heavy with Mary's tale of sorrow and cruelty, but it was also ablaze with a newfound purpose. This was no longer just about escaping her own past. It was about avenging Mary's. Laura found herself delving into the darkness that Mary's adoptive family had carefully hidden. She scoured through old documents, newspaper clippings, and even the decrepit house itself for any evidence of their heinous act. Every piece of information was a clue, a breadcrumb leading her to the truth. Her journey was not without peril. She had to tread lightly, careful not to alert Mary's family of her intentions. She faced countless sleepless nights, the fear of being caught always looming over her. Yet she pressed on, driven by her promise to Mary and the burning desire for justice. There were moments when the obstacles seemed insurmountable. The shadows of the old house grew darker, the silence more deafening. But each time, Laura would remember Mary's ghostly smile, her plea for justice, and find the strength to continue her pursuit. She was just a girl, thrown into a whirlwind of horror and mystery. But she refused to be a victim. She chose to be a fighter, a beacon of hope for Mary, who had long been denied the justice she deserved. Laura's courage was not born out of fearlessness. It was born out of her will to make things right, to bring peace to Mary's restless soul. She was no longer just a runaway. She was a warrior, a champion for the voiceless. As the days turned into weeks, Laura grew more resolute. She had ventured into the heart of darkness, faced her fears, and emerged stronger. She was ready to confront Mary's adoptive family, to expose their wickedness to the world. Despite the danger, Laura pressed on, her resolve unshaken. She knew the road ahead was fraught with danger, but she was determined. For Mary, for justice, she would not back down. The day of reckoning had arrived. It was time for Laura to face the monsters of Mary's past, not hidden behind the shadows of darkness, but in the harsh light of day. Armed with the truth and the local authorities by her side, Laura stood tall. The fear that once gripped her had transformed into a fierce determination. Mary's adoptive family, unaware of the storm about to hit them, were confronted by the echoes of their past. Their faces turned ashen as Laura recounted the horrific tale of Mary's life and untimely demise. The walls of their house, just like the walls of their conscience, had finally started to crumble. With every word that Laura spoke, the truth became harder to deny. Cornered and overwhelmed, they confessed to their heinous crimes, their voices barely above a whisper. The weight of their sins finally caught up with them as they were led away in handcuffs, their faces a picture of guilt and defeat. In the silence that followed, Mary's spirit appeared to Laura. Her translucent form shimmered in the afternoon light, a soft smile playing on her lips. She thanked Laura, her voice filled with gratitude and relief. She was finally free, her spirit at peace. With a final wave, she disappeared, leaving behind an aura of tranquility. Laura, now free from the chains of her past, decided to stay in the house. The house that was once a symbol of fear and despair would now be a beacon of hope. She planned to transform it into a sanctuary for lost souls like herself and Mary, a place where they could find comfort, love, and above all, justice. As the sun set, the once haunted house stood as a symbol of hope and justice. Laura looked on, her heart filled with peace and a newfound purpose. The house, like Laura, had found its redemption. It was the end of a haunting chapter and the beginning of a hopeful one. The darkness had been vanquished, replaced with the warm glow of resolution.